So I recently turned 25. And so with that, I decided that it was a good opportunity to kind of look back and think through what are 25 lessons that I have learned throughout life so far, that if you are about to turn 25 or you are in your teenage years and looking forward to the future, what might be helpful to you. So keeping everything simple, let's dive into 25 lessons from 25 years of life. Let's dive right in. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and on this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. So the very first lesson is that your passions will only grow if you feed them. What I mean by this is that if you don't take time to actively pursue the things that interest you, and you don't actively take time to kind of feed them so that way they have the room to grow, then you're never going to actually fully know what you're truly interested in doing. You're going to have inklings or ideas, but you're never going to have like that kind of full understanding. So consider your passions kind of like a plant. So if you don't give it the right environment, you don't water it, you don't take care of it, then it's going to wither away. So your passions are very much so something that are organically grown if you treat them right and if you intentionally put time into growing them. The second life lesson is that if you have a problem that you just can't seem to get over, then you want to get into it instead. So there was a book called Let Your Life Speak, and it is a book on, vocation, calling, career. But one of the things that the author mentioned is the idea of if you can't get over a problem, rather than trying to get around it or jump over it and have some misstep along the way, get into it instead. Because if you are diving headfirst into the problem, you are facing it. You are allowing yourself the opportunity to actually confront what the problem is, and from there come away from it much stronger and much more secure, rather than trying to wonder, okay, how am I going to avoid this for that much longer? Lesson number 3, growing pains are a part of life, and that's something that is uncomfortable, but it is inevitable too. So we have to just be able to accept that, hey, when we grow, when we change, it's going to hurt at times, but we as a whole will be better off in the end. So growing pains are just a part of the process. Lesson number 4 is that friendship requires a lot of effort, and that's actually okay. We often come away with these ideas from movies or books that friendships just happen so naturally, so flawlessly, and that's not exactly the case. What the truth about friendships is that it takes a lot of intentionality to be able to say, okay, I want to have a good, thriving, healthy relationship with this person, the friendship with this person. I have to put in the work. I have to check in with them. I have to schedule times to get together with them. I have to do X, Y, Z. And of course, it's a two-way street, so they should also be reciprocating that. But friendships take work. And so if it feels like it's a little bit harder when you get older, that makes sense because your lives start to get more complicated, start to get more busy. So there's a lot of intentionality behind actively setting aside time to reconnect with your friends. Number 5 is that you should leave your hometown at least once in your young adult life. And usually college is like a good opportunity for this to happen, where you go away and you get to explore your interests, explore and forge your own identity. And then after those 4 or 5 years on average, then you come back and then you are a different person, or you stay where you're located in your college town and you kind of set roots up there for the start of your young adult life, and you can return to your hometown later. But it's so good to be able to move away and get to gain not only a fresh perspective from some other part of the country or the world, it's that it allows you to also then think, okay, what are things that I'm going to challenge about myself? What are things that I want to press and understand about myself that I couldn't learn and couldn't come to terms with while I was living at home or living in my hometown? So you should always try to leave your hometown at least once in your adult life for a period of time. Lesson number 6 is that you should eat whole foods and find exercise you enjoy. Now, you've probably heard that before, but when I'm saying whole foods, I just mean like minimally processed foods. It doesn't mean that you can't have your Doritos and Oreos. Lord knows that I have a bowl full of candy in my kitchen right now, and I will go through that every day. But it's finding a majority of good whole foods that you enjoy eating, along with exercise that gets you moving, gets your heart pumping, and you actually enjoy it. So some people it might be weightlifting, some people it might be doing Zumba, some people it might be playing the what is it, the switch ring, whatever that actually is, and they enjoy that. But it's just find exercise that you actively want to do, and that will help elevate the quality of your life and your health overall. Number 7 is you should spend time with those who fill up your life gauge, not drain it. So, this is pretty self explanatory simply because we have an intuitive understanding of what this means. You have people who, when you spend time with them, you come away feeling drained, you come away feeling tired, you come away feeling like, okay, wow, I could have been spending time doing anything else. And then you have the opposite, where you have people who, when you spend time with them, you come away feeling energized. You come away feeling excited. You're motivated. You had a great time. You're like, wow, I wish I had more time to kind of just sit with them, talk with them, hang out with them. So you want to find the people who are like that second group, those who add so much value to your life that your love for life, your love for what you're doing, your motivation just goes up and up and up. So they fill your life gauge rather than drain it and siphon it away for themselves or for any other reason. So find those who fill up your life gauge. Number 8 is that most problems can be solved if we get out of our own way. Now, this takes the idea from extreme ownership, where we are, for better or for worse, largely in charge of a lot of the choices that we make in our lives. And so, for most problems as well, we can have some direct influence on how they get solved if we are able to get out of our own way. So, if we're able to be humble about the situation, if we're able to be honest about our role in the problem, and if we're able to be honest that sometimes we may not be the best person to actually solve said problem. It might be someone else, we might know someone else, but we have to actually be able to recognize that reality. So, if we can get out of our own way, we can be much better off in getting these problems solved. Number 9 is that you should read or listen to a lot of different books. Now, I don't just mean different series. So I grew up reading Aragon and Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, where Percy Jackson is still one of my favorite series today, even at 25 years old. And you cannot fault me for that. I will stand by that. But you should read a bunch of different genres as well. You should read cooking books. You should read mystery books. You should read sci-fi books. You should read biographies. You should read history books. You should just explore. And when I say read or listen, it's because some people prefer listening to them on the car rather than reading, and that's perfectly okay too. But explore and expose yourself to a bunch of different forms of entertainment and mediums, because if you're doing that, you are expanding your own horizons while being able to enjoy the actual work someone has put into it and enjoy the storylines and the things that you'll learn from them. And that in of itself can condense years of information or enjoyment into a couple hours or a couple days, depending on how quickly you go through these things. So read or listen to a lot of different books. Number 9 or number 10 is that your career doesn't define you, you define your career. So a career is just a series of jobs. It's the chain that connects each one, and as you look back, you realize that is what has formed your career over the long term. Now, when I say is you define it, it means that you are the one that gets to say, okay, I've done this job and I learned these skills, and then I pivoted into this career field where I got this certification and this experience, and then I pivoted again to my forever company, and I've been with them for the past 15 years. Whatever the situation is, you don't want to let someone else or the outside world be in charge of saying, okay, wow, this is what your career says about you. Instead, you want to be able to say, hey, no, this is what I've gone through in my career, and this is what I say about it. So your career as a whole is something that you are, like Legos, building up brick by brick. So you should be the one to be able to step away and say, okay, this is what each one represents, and this is why it defines, everything I've done. But you are the one crafting the story, not letting someone else do it for you instead. Number 11, building habits is about changing your identity. Now, if you've read Atomic Habits, then you would have seen that one of the leading principles is if you are trying to forge a habit, you have to forge a new identity along with it. You don't just suddenly get into exercising. You suddenly don't just start eating healthy or going to the library and reading through 5 books a week. No, what happens is you do a gradual change into that identity. If you are someone who wants to get into shape, want to get healthier, you don't suddenly just say, okay, I can go to the gym 5 days a week and I can be super active on the weekends too. No, instead it becomes a matter of, hey, I am a healthy person. I am an active person. And then you start making the decisions based off of what that type of person would do. Because eventually, if you're quote unquote faking it till you make it, that becomes your baseline and that becomes the way in which you are making decisions. So instead of saying, okay, I'm just unhealthy, I can't do this, I am out of shape, it becomes, okay, I'm a healthy person. Are they going to choose between the 4 slices of pizza or just be 2? I'm a healthy person. Are they going to choose between getting some salads and some steaks on their plate at the all you can eat buffet? Or is it going to be the jello, the pudding, and the chicken wings the entire time? It's just a matter of changing your perspective, changing how you think about it, and then allowing yourself to understand that, hey, your identity is changing to match the habits that you want. Lesson number 12 is that mistakes are a chance to learn and do better. Now, we don't like messing up. It's not fun usually, and for the most part, it can feel very embarrassing. However, they are a treasure trove of lessons and chances to learn and do better. Because once we make a mistake, we will learn more from that, usually than we will from just having straight successes throughout the rest of our lives. Because when we learn, we can improve, we can change, we can iterate, and then we can do better. So mistakes shouldn't be shied away from. Of course, we want to do our best to avoid them. However, when they do happen, and trust me, they will happen, we should instead embrace them and try to find a way to use them as a learning opportunity rather than a blot on our, history, our transcript, whatever you want to call it. So mistakes are an opportunity to learn and a chance to do better next time. Lesson number 13 is to find out how you personally communicate best. So there are a lot of different communication styles, and they kind of boil down to, do you communicate directly or do you communicate indirectly? And what is your comfort level with times of conflict? You need to understand what works best for you, because then you'll be able to have more constructive conversations in the future, as well as healthier relationships in the future too. Because you are understanding that, hey, I may be trying to say the exact same thing that my partner is, but it's not landing correctly because I'm saying it in my language in a way that I would understand and like it to be said to me. The best example I have is for my wife and I take things very literally. I am a second generation immigrant. My mother came to the US and English is not her first language. And so for me to be able to say that like some metaphor, some analogy that would be a turn of phrase in English that's very commonly used, I have to understand that growing up, that was used less than in my wife's household, because growing up for them, all of her family spoke English and the use of metaphors was used very liberally. And so there was a lot more of them growing up. And so how we communicate has differed because of that, where I'm very direct and literal, and she can sometimes be indirect in terms of how she's trying to explain something. And so you just have to understand, how do you communicate best, so that way you can save yourself the headaches later. Number 14 is understand your relationship style to also save yourself headaches. So that just means when you are going into a relationship, you have the avoidant style, you have the anxious style, you have the secure style, and you have the ambivalent style. And that just kind of boils down into kind of what the names are. If you are avoidant, hey, you don't like conflict, you try to avoid uncomfortable feelings, so you kind of just walk away more frequently than you should. If you're anxious, then you probably overthink them quite a bit. You're probably really worried about XYZ and thinking a lot of the what ifs. If you're ambivalent, you're a mixture of both. You can kind of flop back and forth. You can flop into the secure style, where you're able to comfortably go through hard conversations, comfortably go deeper into your relationship and into your emotions. But understanding that will again save you so much time and so many headaches over your lifetime, because you're able to not only connect with your friends better, your families better, but it's going to be your wife and your kids better. There's so many avenues that this will impact if you can understand what is your relationship style. Number 15 is that don't be afraid of decisions that cause you to backtrack. So I have used this example because I listened to it from Instagram for a long time ago. And it is the idea of like a spiral moving forward. So we may, and I'm going to use example of moving out of your parents' house. We may go to college. We may end up living in our college town for a couple years, and we might be feeling that, hey, we're on our own, we're doing this, it's awesome, but then we get laid off and we have to move back home. Now, usually that might feel like we have backtracked, we've taken some steps back, and now I'm back where I started, and it's so discouraging. But instead, I want you to think about it as an opportunity and the fact that you are actually still moving forward, because that may become the springboard that launches you into your next role, because you have either moved towns again, there's new opportunities, you have the ability to then jump into another role, another job, and save up money and then launch into maybe putting a down payment on a house or get into another apartment, into a nicer apartment, whatever it is. You are still moving forward. So with the decisions that feel like they're backtracking, don't be afraid of them, because you might end up where you were before, but as a whole throughout your life, you are still moving forward. Number 16. So you want to embrace the fact that you won't have all the answers. So instead, you should always be asking questions. Now, we never want to feel like we are asking a dumb question or feel like we don't have the right answer to give. But honestly, that tends to just be a matter of pride. Get okay asking questions, because it's going to save you so much time throughout the rest of your life. Number 17 is that fake it till you make it is real, and it is super effective, especially because, like I said earlier about identities, you eventually do start to embody the traits that you are holding on to or that you feel like you're playing up. So don't be afraid of faking it, but make sure that you are still putting in the work to make it real in the end. Number 18 is that you want to get good at cooking, and your future self will thank you, as well as your future partner. Like, it is one of the most impressive things to so many people if you're able to whip up a nice 3-course meal, if you're able to have a couple items that you can cook regularly that you know are going to be a slam hit. So you want to make sure that you can learn to cook, watch a couple YouTube videos, buy a couple cookbooks, and just, in the beginning, especially when you're in college, experiment. Try some new recipes, try some new foods, and figure out what you like to cook as a whole. So that way you can still eat at the price of a college student, but you're not eating the same things as a college student. So the ramen was a great example. I used that to make a stir fry throughout college, and it was fantastic. But that's because I experimented with it, watched a bunch of videos on it, and then found out how I wanted to try it out. So I encourage you, learn to cook. Seriously, people will thank you for it. Number 19 is learn to be self-sufficient, because you always need to be able to take care of yourself. Now, of course, if you have a wife, if you have a partner, if you have friends who are close by to help you out, that's good. Lean on those in your times of need. When I say to be self-sufficient, that is, you should learn to cook. You should learn how to do chores. You should know how to change the oil on your car. You should know how to look for just certain things. You should know how to do your taxes. There's just so many different layers of self-sufficiency that you should know. And it can be an uncomfortable experience to try to learn them. And trust me, it gets easier, but the start of them can always feel a bit odd and overwhelming. But if you are self-sufficient, you are going to save yourself, again, headache and heartache in the long run, because you know that no matter what life throws at you, you have the confidence to go through it, because you have learned all these other skills and all these other important, decisions and topics for actually making the most of your young adult life. Number 20 is that get good at doing nothing. You don't always need to hustle. And this is not a anti-hustle sentiment. This is just a call to relaxation, a call to being able to turn off the phone, turn off the TV, and curl up on the couch and just do nothing. it sounds weird, especially for those of us in America where we always feel like we have to be in productivity mode, going 100% all the time, or in my family's case, 110% all the time. But instead, learn to do nothing. Learn to rest. Learn to be still. Learn to not reach for your phone just because you heard a notification go off. Let yourself be able to sit down and let everything else just be on pause. That will save you clarity, it will lower your anxiety, but it takes time to get used to actively doing nothing. Lesson number 21 is to learn the basics of a second language. I'm really fond of this one because so right now on Duolingo, I have over 1,000-day streak, and I am proud of that, and I'm going to keep that going. But the reason why you should learn the basics of a second language is because it then opens up so much more of the world to you, because you are no longer siloed into just having to converse within one set and one culture. For myself, I'm trying to learn Spanish and actively be able to have a good conversation because I have family that still lives in Guatemala and relatives and friends that speak more Spanish than English. And so it's important to me to be able to communicate with them, and that just means having to practice and having to learn how that language works and how it also impacts my culture and my understanding. So learn the basics of a second language. Trust me, the world is so much bigger than you know. Number 22 is that you want to learn to have thick skin and a good sense of humor. We know people that make self-deprecating jokes all the time, and that's fine every now and then, but that should not be the basis of your humor overall. You should have thick skin so that way in case someone makes a joke about you and it's in good faith, then you know that, okay, you can laugh about it, you can shrug it off, you can have a good time, and you yourself can make a couple of them too. But you don't want to have it go the opposite way where someone's just throwing you down in the dumps, kicking you while you're down, and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. So learn what a good sense of humor is, develop your own thick skin to them, and then also be able to make your own jokes either about yourself or at your own expense from time to time. Number 23 is lean into what makes you different. So the most confident people that you will ever meet in life are able to embrace the things that make them who they are, that make them stand out from the crowd. And yeah, sometimes that can go too far in the opposite direction where then suddenly you are isolated, siled off because everyone's like, whoa, that's a lot. But for the most part, on average, if you're able to lean into the things that make you uniquely you, you're going to be able to walk away from so many different situations and say, hey, I'm confident that I didn't compromise the things that I love, the things I value, and that shows to so many people and is impressive to so many people as well. So learn to lean into them. Learn to lean into what's unique about you. Number 24 is ask and you shall receive. Now, this is just because no one's a mind reader. No one's going to be able to guess exactly what you need, what you're thinking. So you have to ask for the things that are important to you. If you want to try to get a raise, you have to ask for it, get a game plan, and get in motion. If you want to solve a problem with your spouse, with your partner, with your friends, with your family, you have to ask to be able to sit down and actually go over it. This doesn't mean that you pray to God and then things magically appear. There's a whole song about that. But instead, it's a matter of asking, putting the thoughts out there into the world with purpose, because if you don't voice what's in your mind, no one will know what's actually there. And that's on you to do. So again, ask and you shall receive. The final one is learn what it means to forgive. Now, this can be hard. This can be difficult because there's so many different things that can go wrong in life. There's so many different traumas, so many different pains, so many different experiences that people hold on to that can impact who we grow to be, who we become, and where we go for the rest of our lives. But they don't have to. Now, I say this knowing that, again, there's a lot of things that are messed up. There's a lot of things that can happen to you, and they can be disheartening. They can be painful. But learn to forgive. Even if that's forgiving yourself, forgiving you when you were a kid, if that's forgiving the situation, forgiving the other person. Of course, coming from a Christian background, then it is learning to forgive the other person, turn the other cheek, and move forward with love for yourself, stronger than ever, and love for God. But I encourage you, learn what it means to forgive and learn what it means to heal, because that is one of the first steps that you need to take to get on the right path. to allow the life that you want to be dictated by you and not chained down to something negative that happened in your past. So learn what it means to forgive. But with that, thank you all very much for going through the 25 lessons that I've learned through the 25 years of my life. We'll see what 26 ends up being. But I hope you have an amazing day, you amazing people. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time that I upload a new episode. If you're listening to us on Spotify or another podcast app of choice, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating. That really helps me out and stokes my ego as always. But it really does help share the show with other people just like you. So again, leave us a follow. And with that, I will see you all in the next episode. Go out there and do great things.